Brought to you by...
Hello friends, and welcome back to ETF. Today I'm going to ask you to settle in and prepare yourself. Whatever you do, just remain calm in the presence of what we face here today. And for God's sake, don't panic. On his 17th birthday, Michael is given a present of a Ouija board by Tony, his best friend. At a session, Tony unwittingly unlocks the evil forces of the board. Soon there is a wave of violent killings, and the chief suspect appears to be Michael. He has been witness to all of the killings via premonitions and out-of-body experiences. Is Michael the killer? Can he prove his innocence, or is someone else being possessed by the evil spirit? We're introduced to this film through the voice of our protagonist that plays over a stark retro title sequence, setting us up for the story in which we're about to explore. We're introduced to Michael, a young kid who we quickly learn is new to his surroundings, whose life is about to be plunged into madness. Right from the rip, we do get the impression that he is a bit of a goody two-shoes. We are then very quickly introduced to our supposed love interest to Michael, who look like she has a fucking mustache growing over her fucking eye holes. I'm serious. These fucking things are growing in such lengths that they are forming a fucking unified front. It's been about 5 fucking minutes and these two are already in love with each other. They had one fucking date, for God's sakes. Fuck off. Not to mention that it leads to one of the worst fake sex scenes that I've ever fucking seen. Of course, things take their turn as our filmmakers use the old playing with the Ouija board trope to summon their doom. The audio sync in this one feels somewhat off. I can't tell if it's just not properly aligned or if it was overdubbed in post. The soundtrack of this film starts off sounding more like a fucking 80's Disney film than a horror movie. So many things, even early on, make no fucking sense. First of all, what kind of fucking school expels kids who are late to class? And why the fuck would they then skip school to have ice cream for breakfast? Which is apparently a turn-on for this dipshit. Finally, things start to kick off with a series of startling dreams, visions, and vicious murders, and a bloody hand breaking through a fucking ceiling. Early on, the film attempts to make all the visuals more powerful. It lets the music swell up and take over while our characters try to convey the emotions through looks. However, this all falls flat in deep 80's cheese. This film plays heavily on the tropes that hasn't been used much since the 80s and 90s, where our protagonist sees through the killer's eyes. It's something James Wan is attempting to revitalize with his latest film, *Malignant*. I feel like there was an attempt to play some of the same strings as *Nightmare on Elm Street*, with the alcoholic mother, the strange dream terror themes, and the Bloody Girl classroom scene, which rang a few bells too close to Nancy's infamous nightmare scene. In a lot of ways, it even feels like it's taking pointers from Nightmare 2, which uses a similar possession trope. The possessed killer even speaks in a deep, fretty voice. Each of the film's kill scenes utilizes an abundance of blood, even when it's very clearly just being tossed at our actresses from just off screen. They do get more brutal as the plot goes on, and some of the effects are pretty sweet. So many of the actions throughout the film are so incredibly clunky and rigid, which I chalked up to the piss-poor performances throughout. There are no actors in this one that are worth a damn. They deliver dialogue as flat and empty as possible, making the experience both hard to sit through and laughably entertaining at times. Something I would love to know is why the fuck does this guy wear pajamas that a 5-year-old would wear? The way our protagonist acts and dresses throughout the film makes me feel like he might have been written to be a child at one point, but then was partially rewritten to be a teenager. The film was actually a Mexican production, so I wonder if something may have been lost in translation from script to screen. I did kind of like the concept that when Michael is seeing through the killer's eyes, he is unable to see through his own. It added an element that impaired him and gave a reason to why it was hard for him to try and stop the killer. The look of the killer was a cross between Freddy Krueger and something out of Evil Dead, and his look progresses a bit throughout the film, making this comparison more and more difficult to avoid. The film attempts to pull together an overall theme of love undying. It utilizes this metaphor of a rose and how the rose will never wilt as long as they love each other. But it is so tossed in and heavy-handed that it's fucking horrible. This is a film that is enjoyable for the right audience. If you like cheesy 70s or 80s films like I do, then this is one that you might enjoy to some degree. I had fun with this one despite its ridiculous flaws. I'm giving Dope Panic a C. This one is available on Shudder for those who like seeing through the eyes of the killer subgenres. I have always thought that this was an underutilized concept. Turns out that there are more of these types of films than I ever expected. Maybe I'll have to seek out more to cover in the future. If you know any, I'd love some recommendations.